All right, I got an Ultimate 64 Elite motherboard, and I'm going to make some tweaks to the sound. I'm going to make the sound go from this to this. Do you have your headphones on? Because you kind of need to have your headphones on. At least have something stereo. Your phone's not going to cut it. Now let me tell you a little bit about my setup real quick. My Ultimate 64 got here before my case, so that's why it's open like that. I have a 6581 real SID in there, and I'll show you how I activate that. And I have my audio broke out with a Commodore Forever breakout box, specifically designed for the Ultimate so that you can get the left and the right channels out. Now, if you're using just HDMI to a television, a stereo television or audio system, you won't necessarily need this. But because my monitor is just a regular monitor with no speakers, I needed a source for the audio. So I got that box from Commodore Forever. Neat little device. And for the video that you see in the video and the audio that you hear, I'm actually using a feature of the Ultimate 64 that allows you to take the data streams for the video and the audio and record them on a PC. So I just had them mixed into OBS and got a really clean video and audio signal through that. Here we go. Okay, so basically what we have here is almost out of the box an Ultimate 64 Elite. I've added a SID chip, but it's not activated yet. We'll get to that in a minute. The only thing I've done is configured it for NTSC. So I want to get a baseline for the sound. So I'm going to play some music, and I'll explain later why I'm using this particular disk image. For now, to ignore the text, I'm going to load this up and play it. So we got some good Commodore 64 SID tune going here with an advertisement for the Shark's Mouth VBS. A whole 9 megs online. That's actually pretty cool for back then. Don't try to call that number. All right, you can hear the sound. It sounds really good, but it's definitely not stereo. So I'm going to go into the settings menu. That's F2. And first let's look at the Ulti-SID configuration. So out of the box, an Ultimate 64 has essentially two 8580 chips in it, both emulated. And on this screen, you can change the way these sound. You could change the specific SID chip. If you wanted to, you could make it a 6581. That's what I have here. But I'm going to leave this the way it's set for now. I actually want the 8580 on the emulated SID. You could ignore the rest of the settings, play with them if you want, see how they change the sound, but it's not important for this video. All right, so we're going to go back here, say no, open the settings again. Now let's look at the audio mixer. It's a very important screen for your sound from the Ultimate 64. So you can control the volumes of the SIDs and things like that, but the most important setting for now is the pan. So our two default 8580 emulated SIDs are both right at the center of the soundstage. And there's no reason to change that really, because by default they are playing exactly the same configuration. So there's no difference in the sound. If you were to move them around on the soundstage, you wouldn't really change what you hear. This basically is the monaural sound. All right, so let's go back to settings. So the first thing I want to do is turn on my real SID chip. So you can see here where the SID sockets are disabled. It has detected my 6581, but it's not enabled by default. If you don't have an Ultimate Elite, or I'm not sure which revision of the board started this, but this board will automatically detect and configure the SID chips that are plugged in. Older boards will not, so you will have to figure out the configuration for this stuff if you have an older board. Mine is automatically configured and it's all correct. All I have to do is, this is socket number 1. I'm just going to enable that. Save it. So now I'm curious what this sounds like. All I've done is added this particular SID into the mix. I haven't disabled the other ones or anything, so now effectively we're going to have 3 SIDs playing. So let's see what it sounds like. All right, it's different. It's different, and it actually is a little bit stereo now, and I'll show you why in a second, but we're going to improve this a little bit with a little bit of refinement. Back into the settings menu. We're going to go here. I don't want 3 SIDs playing. I only want 2. I want an emulated SID and I want the real SID playing. I don't want the third. So I'm going to go into the SID addressing configuration page. And what this means is on a Commodore 64 with 1 SID chip, D400 is where you would set registers to control the sound of the chip. So this is telling the Ultimate 64, in this example right here, it's getting the instructions to send to the chip from D400. It's the same for the second socket. And if you have old programs that, most programs on a Commodore 64, they're going to use D400 for all the sound, and that's it. There's some much more modern stuff that's designed to be stereo, where you have a second SID chip on a different address and you would configure the appropriate address here. I'm not going to worry about that here, because my concern is I want to play these old files that I remember from my childhood. I want to hear those in stereo. Now, we're not really adding more channels to the music, but we can still make it sound better, kind of like that expansion function that they added to TVs back in the day when they were still broadcasting mono. Anyway, what I want to do is turn off the second AltaSID, because I really don't want 3. So I'm just going to set this to be unmapped. So I just turned off AltaSID 2. And the rest of these settings are fine. They could be explored later. So I'm going to save these settings. So now effectively I have 2 SID chips working. But there's still one more thing to change. I'm going to go back into the audio mixer. This is the most important part of this. The AltaSID that's turned on is still set to be the center, right at the center of the soundstage. And let's see, the socket 1, by default, it goes left 3. So this is why we had a slight stereo sound already. But this is not quite what I want. I want my emulated SID to be left 4, and you could change this to 5, 3, whatever. What this is saying is I want the sound from the emulated 8580 to go mostly on the left side, just a little bit on the right. Then this one, remember, is the AltaSID 2. I turned that off, so this doesn't matter. And I'm going to go down to the socket 1. That's for this guy. I'm going to set him to right 4. All right, so this chip right here is mostly coming out of that right speaker. The emulated SID is mostly coming out of the left speaker. That's all the changes we need to make. So let's see what this sounds like. And that sounds really awesome. Got headphones on. You can hear that sound just kind of surrounding you. So the reason that works to give that encompassing expanded sound is because I have a 6581 and an 8580 playing from 2 different channels, left and right, and the sound is just a little bit different. For one thing, the 6581, the real SID, has an analog component to it, so no 2 are exactly the same. But anyway, mixed with the 8580, which has a slightly different sound, gives a slight dissonance from the left and the right channel, which gives a kind of a stereo sound. So you're probably wondering what's the deal with that disk image I was using. Well, when I was a kid, we had this disk that had a game called Deceptor on it. The cool thing about that disk is that it had documentation written by somebody called the Phantom Shark, and I didn't really care for the game, but I could watch those docs because I liked the music. In fact, I was always more impressed by the Commodore hardware and its sound and its graphics capabilities than I really ever was into playing games. But anyway, I've had that song kind of just stuck in my head occasionally since I was a kid. So I thought, hey, I'm going to play this on my Ultimate 64 and make it even better than it was.
Mission accomplished. Congratulations.